Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use.
The Equalizer 4 has become a topic of intense discussion among fans of the franchise, not only because of the legacy it carries from its origins as a television series in the 1980s but also due to the modern resurgence of the character in the cinematic universe led by Denzel Washington. The franchise began as a CBS television series, created by Michael Sloan and Richard Lindheim, which followed the life of Robert McCall, a retired intelligence officer who used his unique skills to help ordinary people facing extraordinary circumstances. The original series ran from 1985 to 1989 and immediately established McCall as a character defined by meticulous intelligence, moral conviction, and an unwavering commitment to justice. The tone of the original series combined suspense, detective procedural elements, and a moralistic undertone that portrayed McCall as a man whose past skills could be harnessed for the protection of the vulnerable. The transition of The Equalizer from television to film occurred in 2014 when director Antoine Fuqua brought the story to the big screen, casting Denzel Washington as Robert McCall. Washington's portrayal of McCall was widely praised for its intensity and gravitas, capturing both the physical and psychological dimensions of a man whose quiet demeanor could mask an unstoppable force when faced with injustice. The first film in the series adapted the core themes of the original television series while modernizing the context, situating McCall in a contemporary urban environment where organized crime, corruption, and personal vendettas created fertile ground for his vigilante interventions. The 2014 film was both a critical and commercial success, demonstrating that the character of McCall could translate effectively from episodic television storytelling into a cinematic narrative with larger stakes and higher production values. Following the success of the first film, The Equalizer 2 was released in 2018. Once again directed by Antoine Fuqua and starring Denzel Washington, the sequel expanded the personal dimensions of McCall's character, exploring his past and delving into themes of loyalty, vengeance, and moral responsibility. The film also introduced new characters and adversaries, enriching the narrative universe and laying the groundwork for potential subsequent installments. By 2018, the franchise had firmly established itself as a vehicle for action-driven, character-focused storytelling where moral complexity intersected with thrilling action sequences, often involving hand-to-hand combat, strategic planning, and moments of intense suspense. The Equalizer 3, released in 2023, continued this trajectory and was presented as a potential capstone to the film series. This installment emphasized not only action and suspense but also moral ambiguity and the consequences of McCall's vigilantism. Reports from interviews surrounding the release of the third film suggested that both Antoine Fuqua and Denzel Washington viewed it as a possible conclusion to the narrative arc, implying that McCall's journey might reach its natural endpoint. However, in the entertainment industry, statements about final films are often fluid, and discussions about future sequels, including The Equalizer 4, have persisted due to both fan demand and the commercial success of the franchise. Discussions about The Equalizer 4 are complicated by a combination of official statements, rumors, and speculative reporting. Some sources claim that Denzel Washington has expressed a willingness to return for future installments, hinting at the possibility of both a fourth and fifth film. Similarly, there have been discussions, though unconfirmed, regarding Antoine Fuqua's potential return as director. Despite this, no formal production announcement, release date, or official casting information has been confirmed. The ambiguity surrounding the project has created a mixture of anticipation and skepticism among fans and media outlets alike. It is important to distinguish between fan-generated content, speculative reporting, and verified studio announcements, as there have been multiple instances of false trailers, fabricated casting lists, and exaggerated claims about the film's development. If The Equalizer 4 were to be produced, the plot possibilities are vast, given the established character of Robert McCall and the narrative patterns of the previous films. McCall's character is defined by his intelligence, strategic thinking, and moral compass, and any continuation would likely explore new ethical dilemmas, emerging threats, or unresolved personal issues. Speculative narrative suggests that McCall could confront international criminal networks, face adversaries with sophisticated technological capabilities, or deal with personal stakes that test his commitment to justice. Furthermore, the evolution of his relationships with recurring characters, potential allies, and antagonists could provide both emotional depth and narrative continuity. Themes of redemption, loyalty, and the long-term consequences of vigilantism are likely to remain central, as they have been a hallmark of the franchise since its inception. Casting considerations for The Equalizer 4 are naturally tied to both continuity and fan expectations. Denzel Washington's return would be crucial, given his iconic embodiment of McCall. Supporting characters from previous films, such as those providing moral support, technological expertise, or personal connections, might also return to maintain narrative coherence and audience investment. The introduction of new characters could serve to refresh the narrative, presenting McCall with fresh challenges and conflicts while expanding the cinematic universe. However, without official confirmation, any discussion of casting remains speculative, though it is informed by the franchise's history of blending established actors with new talent to create a dynamic and engaging narrative ensemble. The potential director and production team for The Equalizer 4 would play a significant role in shaping both the tone and visual style of the film. Antoine Fuqua's prior involvement has set a precedent for intense, stylish, and morally complex storytelling, combining kinetic action sequences with deliberate character-driven moments. If Fuqua returns, one could expect a continuation of this aesthetic and thematic approach. Alternatively, a new director could introduce stylistic shifts, narrative experimentation, or reinterpretation of McCall's character, reflecting contemporary cinematic trends and audience expectations. Production design, cinematography, and sound design would continue to be critical in establishing both the physical and emotional landscapes of the story, ensuring that the action sequences are grounded in realism while maintaining cinematic spectacle. Release date predictions for The Equalizer 4 remain entirely speculative. Given that there has been no official production announcement, any proposed dates, ranging from 2026 to 2027, are based purely on hypothetical production timelines. Factors influencing the release would include script development, casting, scheduling of key actors and crew, production logistics, post-production, marketing strategy, and alignment with studio release windows. Historically, major action franchises aim for summer or holiday releases to maximize box office potential, suggesting that if the film were greenlit, a high-profile release date would be likely. Marketing campaigns, including trailers, promotional materials, and press tours, would follow once production is officially underway. The conversation around The Equalizer 4 also highlights the interaction between fandom, media speculation, and the realities of film production. Fans are deeply invested in the continuation of McCall's story, often generating content, theories, and expectations online. Media outlets, seeking to capitalize on audience interest, may present speculative information as near-confirmed news, which can blur the lines between rumor and reality. Meanwhile, studios and creators must balance artistic intentions, financial considerations, and logistical constraints in determining whether a sequel is feasible. The result is a dynamic landscape in which The Equalizer 4 exists simultaneously as an object of desire, a narrative possibility, and an uncertain project awaiting official confirmation. In conclusion, The Equalizer 4 occupies a complex position within contemporary cinema. While the film has not been officially announced, its potential existence is fueled by the enduring popularity of the franchise, the iconic performance of Denzel Washington, and the thematic richness of the source material. The history of the franchise, from its origins as a television series, through the successful adaptation into a modern action film trilogy, to the ongoing discussions about a possible fourth installment, illustrates both the challenges and opportunities inherent in continuing a beloved narrative. Fans and observers must navigate a landscape of speculation, rumor, and official statements, remaining aware that, while excitement is warranted, definitive information about plot, cast, release date, and production team is not yet publicly available. Until official announcements are made, The Equalizer 4 exists primarily as a projection of hope, potential, and narrative imagination, representing the enduring appeal of Robert McCall and the moral, action-driven universe he inhabits. The Equalizer franchise has always held a unique place in modern action cinema, bridging the gap between television nostalgia and contemporary cinematic storytelling. Originating from the 1985 CBS television series, The Equalizer initially captured audiences with its portrayal of a lone vigilante, Robert McCall, who possessed a unique moral compass and a talent for helping those who could not help themselves. The essence of the character was a man who existed on the edge of society, operating outside conventional legal frameworks yet guided by a strong sense of justice and personal ethics. The television series gained acclaim for its mix of suspense, action, and character-driven storytelling, laying the foundation for a reboot decades later. The cinematic reboot began in 2014, when Denzel Washington took on the role of Robert McCall, marking a significant evolution of the character from television to the big screen. Washington's portrayal brought a combination of gravitas, intensity, and depth, elevating the franchise beyond standard action fare into a morally complex and emotionally resonant series. The first film followed McCall as a retired intelligence operative seeking a quiet life, only to be drawn back into a world of violence and corruption to help those in need. The film's success was attributed not only to Washington's performance but also to the sharp direction of Antoine Fuqua, whose cinematic vision emphasized realism in fight choreography and a gritty aesthetic that distinguished the series from more fantastical action franchises. The sequel, released in 2018, continued to explore McCall's world, expanding upon his personal code and delving into his past connections. The Equalizer 2 explored themes of betrayal, loyalty, and vengeance while maintaining a focus on meticulous action sequences and high-stakes moral dilemmas. It was notable for being one of the rare sequels in modern action cinema where the lead character's internal development was given as much weight as the external conflicts, allowing audiences to connect with McCall not merely as a formidable fighter but as a human being wrestling with his conscience. Following a 5-year gap, The Equalizer 3 premiered in 2023, and with it came a renewed conversation about the character's arc and the potential for further installments. While some critics and fans felt the trilogy offered a natural conclusion to McCall's story, Denzel Washington and the creative team have suggested that the saga may continue. The announcement of The Equalizer 4, while still in early development, has reignited interest in the franchise, with anticipation surrounding both the narrative direction and the returning team behind the camera. As of now, confirmed information about The Equalizer 4 remains sparse. Denzel Washington is slated to return, reprising his role as Robert McCall, which ensures continuity of character and tone. Washington's involvement is critical, as his presence not only provides star power but also serves as a narrative anchor, linking the upcoming installment to the established themes and style of the prior films. However, beyond Washington, the supporting cast has yet to be publicly revealed, leaving much speculation about potential allies, adversaries, and new characters who may influence McCall's journey. The director's chair for The Equalizer 4 has not been definitively confirmed, though Antoine Fuqua's prior involvement in the franchise suggests the possibility of his return. Fuqua's directorial approach, known for its grounded realism and kinetic action sequences, has been a defining characteristic of the series, shaping both the visual and narrative identity of the films. Should he return, audiences can expect a continuation of the franchise's signature style, intense, tightly choreographed action sequences balanced with introspective character moments. Plot details for The Equalizer 4 are largely speculative at this stage. Drawing from the franchise's established narrative patterns, it is likely that McCall will encounter a new moral challenge, one that tests his ethical boundaries while compelling him to act as a protector for those who cannot defend themselves. Past installments have successfully combined social commentary, personal vendettas, and suspenseful storytelling, suggesting that the fourth film will continue to explore these dynamics, perhaps introducing a fresh setting or a modern socio-political issue that resonates with contemporary audiences. The themes of justice, retribution, and moral responsibility are expected to remain central, as they are intrinsic to McCall's character. Regarding production timelines, there has been no official announcement of filming dates, shooting locations, or production schedule. In Hollywood, such projects often undergo extensive pre-production planning, particularly for action franchises requiring careful coordination of stunts, location shoots, and special effects. Given the scope and budget typically associated with the Equalizer films, one can reasonably anticipate several months of pre-production before principal photography begins, followed by a post-production phase involving editing, visual effects, and scoring. The franchise has always been notable for its realistic portrayal of action, often relying on practical stunts rather than purely computer-generated sequences. This dedication to authenticity enhances the tension and visceral impact of fight scenes, and it is reasonable to expect that the Equalizer 4 will continue this tradition. Washington's involvement in stunt preparation and fight choreography has been a hallmark of the series, contributing to the believability and intensity of the action. Fans can anticipate sequences that blend physical skill with strategic thinking, reflecting McCall's intelligence and resourcefulness. While the release date for the Equalizer 4 has not been disclosed, industry patterns suggest that the studio may aim for a high-profile release window, possibly coinciding with peak cinema-going periods such as summer or holiday seasons. Marketing strategies are likely to emphasize Denzel Washington's return, the continuity of the franchise, and the escalating stakes of McCall's latest mission. Trailers, teaser campaigns, and press releases will play a crucial role in generating anticipation, though as of now no official trailers have been released. It is also probable that promotional efforts will include strategic partnerships, social media engagement, and potentially fan events to capitalize on the franchise's established audience. In terms of thematic exploration, the Equalizer films have historically engaged with the moral complexities of vigilantism, exploring questions of justice, legality, and personal responsibility. McCall operates in the gray area between law enforcement and criminality, often confronting situations where conventional authorities are ineffective or corrupt. This ethical tension has provided a compelling narrative engine, allowing the films to combine adrenaline-driven action with thoughtful reflection on societal structures and individual choice. The Equalizer 4 is expected to continue probing these moral dilemmas, challenging McCall with new scenarios that test both his physical and ethical limits. From a franchise perspective, the Equalizer series exemplifies the successful adaptation of classic television properties into modern cinematic universes. It balances nostalgia with contemporary relevance, leveraging the charisma and gravitas of Denzel Washington while maintaining the suspenseful, action-oriented storytelling that defined the original series. The potential expansion into further sequels beyond the fourth installment highlights the enduring appeal of the character and the flexibility of the narrative framework, allowing filmmakers to explore diverse scenarios, antagonists, and thematic concerns without departing from the core identity of the franchise. Overall, while concrete details about the Equalizer 4 remain limited, the combination of confirmed lead talent, a rich narrative legacy, and the franchise's established aesthetic and thematic identity provide a strong foundation for anticipation. Fans and industry observers alike are watching closely for announcements regarding cast additions, directorial confirmation, plot synopsis, and release dates. The careful management of expectations, coupled with strategic marketing and storytelling innovation, will determine the success of this next chapter in the saga of Robert McCall. The Equalizer franchise has long been recognized as a hallmark of American vigilante action cinema, originating from the 1980s television series of the same name. The story centers on Robert McCall, a former intelligence officer who has retired from clandestine operations but cannot ignore the injustices he witnesses in everyday life. His character embodies a unique combination of moral rigor, calculated violence, and relentless pursuit of justice, often balancing intellect, physicality, and a nuanced understanding of human psychology. The cinematic adaptation of the franchise began in 2014 under the direction of Antoine Fuqua, with Denzel Washington taking the lead role. From the very first film, the series distinguished itself by combining sleek action sequences with a grounded, methodical approach to vigilante justice, which resonated with audiences worldwide. Unlike conventional action heroes whose power derives primarily from raw force, McCall's strength lies equally in his intellect, resourcefulness, and ability to strategize under pressure. The first film established the foundation for the franchise's tone and themes. Robert McCall, living a quiet life, is drawn back into action when he encounters individuals suffering under systemic abuse and criminal oppression. His methods are precise and calculated, often bordering on surgical, reflecting his intelligence background and disciplined mindset. The film was not only a commercial success but also received praise for Denzel Washington's performance, Fuqua's direction, and the film's unique approach to action storytelling. By combining high-octane sequences with a morally compelling protagonist, the film created a blueprint for what audiences could expect from subsequent installments. The Equalizer 2, released in 2018, expanded both the narrative scope and McCall's personal stakes. Unlike the first film, which was focused primarily on isolated incidents of injustice, the sequel delved deeper into McCall's personal history, exploring themes of friendship, loyalty, and the repercussions of a life lived in the shadows of covert operations. This sequel retained the franchise's signature action style while introducing a more layered emotional arc. By confronting his past and seeking justice for a murdered friend, McCall's character development reached new heights, demonstrating that the series could balance visceral action with character-driven storytelling. Fuqua's direction continued to emphasize the procedural aspects of McCall's vigilantism, including meticulous planning and psychological manipulation, which became trademarks of the series' cinematic language. The Equalizer 3, released in 2023, was marketed as a potentially concluding chapter for the franchise. It further solidified the series' reputation for high-caliber action, moral complexity, and nuanced storytelling. In this installment, McCall faces a broader network of criminal elements, testing both his physical abilities and his strategic intelligence. Critics praised the film for its sophisticated action sequences, atmospheric cinematography, and the seamless blend of suspense with moral dilemmas. Antoine Fuqua's directorial style matured throughout the trilogy, emphasizing narrative cohesion and emotional resonance, while Denzel Washington's portrayal of McCall deepened with subtlety and gravitas. Fans and critics alike noted the trilogy's evolution in terms of action choreography, thematic depth, and cinematic aesthetics, making the films not just entertainment, but an exploration of justice, morality, and human resilience. Despite the narrative closure suggested by the third film, discussions and rumors about The Equalizer 4 have circulated among fans and media outlets. These speculations are largely driven by Denzel Washington's own statements and interviews, where he expressed openness to reprising the role in further sequels, and by the commercial success of the previous installments. However, it is crucial to note that no official confirmation from the production studio exists regarding a fourth film. Various fan-made trailers have circulated online, claiming to depict The Equalizer 4, yet these have been consistently debunked as artificial or unauthorized content, often employing AI-generated imagery and repurposed footage from prior films. Such content has contributed to a blurred understanding of the film's actual production status among the audience. The narrative possibilities for a fourth installment, should it be produced, are intriguing. Given the trajectory of the previous films, it is reasonable to hypothesize that McCall would confront an even more formidable adversary, perhaps linked to a global network of organized crime or high-level corruption. His personal code of justice and moral compass would likely remain central, driving the plot as he navigates complex ethical dilemmas and confronts challenges that test both his ingenuity and his physical prowess. Thematically, The Equalizer 4 could explore the consequences of vigilantism, the psychological toll of living a life in constant conflict with criminal elements, and the broader societal implications of one individual taking justice into his own hands. Casting for a hypothetical Equalizer 4 would almost certainly see the return of Denzel Washington as Robert McCall, given his iconic association with the character. The supporting cast could introduce new characters, potentially including law enforcement allies, morally ambiguous individuals, or new antagonists who challenge McCall's methodology and philosophy. The dynamics between returning and new characters would offer fertile ground for dramatic tension and emotional depth, enriching the franchise's storytelling potential. From a production standpoint, Antoine Fuqua's continued involvement would be highly desirable, given his integral role in defining the franchise's visual and narrative style. Fuqua's expertise in choreographing action sequences that balance realism with cinematic spectacle has been a hallmark of the series, and his direction ensures continuity in tone, pacing, and character portrayal. Scriptwriting for such a project would likely involve crafting a narrative that respects the established lore while introducing innovative challenges and character developments to keep the story fresh and engaging. Marketing for a potential fourth installment would almost certainly leverage the franchise's established reputation, focusing on Denzel Washington's return, high-octane action sequences, and the continuation of McCall's moral journey. Trailers, teasers, and promotional materials would emphasize suspense, tactical ingenuity, and emotional stakes, maintaining alignment with the tone and style that fans have come to expect. In terms of distribution, the film would likely follow a global release strategy, capitalizing on international markets where the franchise has historically performed well. The release timing of The Equalizer 4 remains speculative. Analysts suggest that, given the production cycles of similar high-budget action franchises, a development and release timeline of 2 to 4 years could be realistic once official production commences. However, without confirmation from the studio, all timelines are conjectural. The commercial and critical reception of the previous installments provides a strong incentive for the studio to consider continuing the franchise, but logistical considerations, scheduling conflicts, and narrative planning all play crucial roles in determining the feasibility of a fourth film. Overall, the Equalizer franchise occupies a significant place in contemporary action cinema, blending high-stakes action with moral inquiry and character-driven storytelling. While The Equalizer 4 remains unconfirmed, the franchise's enduring popularity, the iconic portrayal by Denzel Washington, and the directorial vision of Antoine Fuqua suggest that any future installments would be highly anticipated and scrutinized by both fans and critics. The narrative, thematic, and cinematic potential for a fourth film is substantial, offering opportunities to expand the franchise's scope, deepen character exploration, and deliver compelling entertainment that resonates with audiences around the world. Until official announcements are made, speculation will continue to fill the void, driven by fan enthusiasm, media coverage, and the ongoing cultural impact of the franchise. The Equalizer 4 continues the saga of Robert McCall, the enigmatic former intelligence operative whose life has always been defined by a relentless pursuit of justice for those who cannot protect themselves. The franchise, known for its sharp blend of intense action, moral ambiguity, and the charismatic presence of Denzel Washington, has grown into a cultural touchstone for fans of vigilante thrillers. From the original 2014 release, which introduced audiences to McCall's methodical and almost surgical approach to dealing with crime, through its sequels, the series has consistently delivered a mix of high-stakes action sequences and quiet, introspective moments that reveal the depth of its protagonist's character. The third installment, released in 2023, offered a sense of closure, with McCall seemingly walking away from a life filled with violence, choosing a quieter existence after finally confronting personal demons and external threats. Yet, the announcement of The Equalizer 4 reignites the narrative, promising a continuation of McCall's story in ways that expand the thematic and geographical scope of the series while preserving the core elements that have made it successful. In conceptualizing the fourth film, the creative team faced the challenge of balancing audience expectations with the need to innovate. While the first three films primarily centered on McCall addressing injustices in his immediate environment, whether local criminal enterprises or opportunistic predatory figures, the rumored narrative of The Equalizer 4 suggests a more global perspective. Reports indicate that McCall might find himself entangled in international threats, potentially involving high-stakes political intrigue and organized crime syndicates operating across borders. Such a shift would not only elevate the tension and complexity of the story but also provide new opportunities for cinematic spectacle, including elaborate chase sequences, carefully choreographed combat scenes, and high-concept espionage elements. Though these plot points remain speculative, they align with the franchise's established pattern of progressively raising the stakes with each installment while keeping McCall's moral compass as the guiding force. Denzel Washington's return as Robert McCall has been confirmed, which ensures continuity of character and tone. Washington's portrayal, marked by a calm yet intense screen presence, allows for a nuanced exploration of a man who operates on the fringes of legality yet adheres to a personal code of ethics. His performance is often a study in contrasts, a quiet, methodical demeanor juxtaposed with bursts of precise, controlled violence when confronting those who exploit the vulnerable. The anticipation surrounding his involvement in The Equalizer 4 is heightened by the actor's public statements regarding his commitment to at least 2 additional films in the series, suggesting that the franchise creators are planning a multi-layered arc that may explore McCall's backstory, moral dilemmas, and evolving role in a world increasingly complicated by global threats and technology-driven crime. Supporting cast details remain largely unconfirmed, though speculation suggests the introduction of new allies and adversaries designed to challenge McCall on both tactical and ethical levels. Previous films have demonstrated the franchise's ability to craft memorable secondary characters, whether they serve as catalysts for McCall's actions or as foils that highlight his resourcefulness and integrity. It is anticipated that The Equalizer 4 will continue this trend, with potential inclusion of characters who may offer emotional depth, moral conflict, or strategic tension, enhancing the narrative complexity. Villains are expected to be multidimensional, moving beyond one-dimensional antagonists to become credible threats whose motivations and actions drive the plot forward in compelling ways. The production of The Equalizer 4 is set to leverage the franchise's hallmark combination of realism and stylized action. Antoine Fuqua, who directed the previous films, is widely believed to be involved, providing continuity in cinematic vision and storytelling. Fuqua's direction is characterized by meticulous attention to visual composition, kinetic action sequences, and an ability to balance high-octane set pieces with quieter, character-driven moments. Coupled with the writing expertise of Richard Wenk, the narrative structure is likely to weave together multiple threads, balancing suspense, character development, and moral inquiry. The cinematography is expected to emphasize both the intensity of action and the emotional landscapes of the characters, using lighting, framing, and camera movement to reinforce narrative tension and thematic resonance. While official plot details remain under wraps, industry speculation and media reports suggest a storyline that may place McCall in a European context, confronting a network of international criminals whose operations have far-reaching consequences. This setting would allow the film to explore themes of global justice, personal accountability, and the ethical complexities of intervention in foreign environments. Such a narrative approach would be consistent with the franchise's evolution, progressively expanding the scale of McCall's mission while maintaining the personal stakes that make the character relatable and compelling. The integration of international elements also opens the door to a richer visual and cultural tapestry, providing audiences with new locations, challenges, and narrative textures. The anticipated action sequences in The Equalizer 4 are expected to combine hand-to-hand combat, strategic use of the environment, and inventive choreography that reflects McCall's tactical expertise. Previous films have been praised for their realistic depiction of combat, avoiding overly stylized or exaggerated violence in favor of sequences that feel grounded and impactful. In the fourth installment, it is likely that this approach will be expanded upon, incorporating new techniques, weaponry, and situational challenges that test McCall's abilities in novel ways. These sequences serve not only as entertainment but also as narrative devices, revealing character traits, strategic thinking, and moral decision-making in the heat of conflict. In addition to action, The Equalizer 4 is expected to delve deeper into McCall's personal journey, exploring his psychological and emotional landscape as he navigates a world of increasing complexity. Themes of justice, retribution, and ethical ambiguity will likely remain central, providing a philosophical backbone that elevates the film beyond conventional action fare. The franchise has historically balanced intense physicality with reflective moments, allowing audiences to engage with McCall as a multidimensional character whose decisions carry weight and consequence. The fourth installment may further explore the tension between McCall's desire for personal peace and the demands placed upon him by circumstances that require intervention, raising questions about the limits of responsibility, morality, and personal sacrifice. The Equalizer 4 is part of the modern film adaptation of the classic 1980s television series, The Equalizer, which originally aired on CBS. The franchise centers on Robert McCall, a man with a dark past who uses his intelligence, combat skills, and unwavering sense of justice to help those who cannot help themselves. In the television series, McCall was portrayed as a former government agent with extraordinary skills in investigation, strategy, and hand-to-hand combat, making him a formidable force against criminals, corrupt officials, and organized crime. The modern film adaptation rebooted the character for a new generation, with Denzel Washington taking on the role of McCall. The first film in the rebooted franchise, released in 2014, introduced audiences to McCall as a man attempting to live a quiet life after years of service in a highly secretive and dangerous intelligence role. However, when he witnesses injustice or people being harmed, he is compelled to intervene, using his precise, calculated methods to achieve justice outside the limitations of the legal system. The Equalizer franchise is renowned for its combination of cerebral strategy and intense, realistic action. Unlike traditional action heroes, McCall relies not only on brute strength but also on careful planning, observation, and improvisation. He assesses situations with remarkable attention to detail and often turns seemingly ordinary environments into arenas of strategic advantage. The films also explore themes of morality, redemption, and personal responsibility, emphasizing the weight of McCall's decisions and the impact of vigilantism in a modern society. The appeal of the series lies in its balance of character-driven storytelling and action-oriented sequences, where each confrontation is as much about intellect as it is about physical prowess. The second installment, released in 2018, expanded the scope of the narrative and introduced McCall to international criminal networks, further demonstrating his adaptability and ingenuity. The third film, which premiered in 2023, was positioned as a potential conclusion to the trilogy, exploring the culmination of McCall's personal journey while continuing to deliver the trademark action and moral complexity. Each film has been directed by Antoine Fuqua, whose collaboration with Denzel Washington has become a defining feature of the franchise. Fuqua's direction emphasizes realism, intensity, and dramatic tension, ensuring that each action sequence feels grounded and consequential, rather than merely stylistic. The announcement of The Equalizer 4 has generated significant anticipation and speculation among fans and the media. Denzel Washington has publicly stated in multiple interviews that he is interested in continuing the franchise, mentioning that plans exist for both a fourth and a fifth installment. These statements have fueled discussions about the potential narrative direction of the series, as audiences are eager to see how McCall's story might evolve further. However, despite Washington's remarks, official confirmation from the studio regarding production timelines, the plot, or a release date remains absent. The lack of concrete details has created a situation where rumors, fan speculation, and unofficial trailers circulate widely, but none of these can be taken as verified information. It is important to distinguish between officially sanctioned announcements and speculative material when assessing the status of The Equalizer 4. At present, the confirmed returning cast member is Denzel Washington reprising his role as Robert McCall. His portrayal continues to be central to the franchise, as his combination of gravitas, intensity, and nuanced emotional expression has become synonymous with the character. Beyond Washington, there are no confirmed returning or new cast members, although there is speculation that actors from previous installments, such as Dakota Fanning, who appeared in The Equalizer 3, might return in some capacity. The production team, including director Antoine Fuqua, has not officially confirmed involvement in the fourth installment. While many assume Fuqua's return due to his established relationship with Washington and the previous films, until an official statement is released, this remains speculative. The plot of The Equalizer 4 is largely unknown. Fans expect that it will continue to explore McCall's role as a vigilante addressing injustice, potentially introducing new antagonists, moral dilemmas, and situations that challenge his skills and ethical compass. Given the trajectory of the previous films, it is likely that the narrative will balance high-stakes action sequences with character-driven moments that delve into McCall's motivations, history, and the consequences of his choices. Speculation has included potential international settings, new criminal networks, and complex personal relationships, but none of these elements have been officially confirmed. Analysts and fans often extrapolate the plot based on previous patterns in the franchise, but until an official synopsis is released, all details remain conjectural. Regarding trailers and promotional materials, no official content has been released by the studio. Several online videos labeled as The Equalizer 4 trailers have circulated, but these have been identified by multiple entertainment news outlets as fan-made, AI-generated, or repurposed footage from previous films. It is critical to treat these with caution, as they do not represent authentic information about the movie. True promotional content will be distributed by verified studio channels and will feature confirmed information about the cast, plot, and release date. The release date for The Equalizer 4 has not been officially announced. While some speculation suggests a potential window around 2025 or 2026, this is not verified and should be regarded as tentative. The studio's official channels, along with credible entertainment outlets, will provide accurate information when production and distribution timelines are confirmed. Until then, any references to a specific date are speculative. The timing of the release will likely depend on the completion of the script, the scheduling of the cast and director, and logistical considerations such as filming locations, post-production, and marketing strategies. Production of The Equalizer 4, when officially undertaken, will likely maintain the franchise's focus on realistic action, narrative tension, and morally complex storytelling. Past films have demonstrated a commitment to crafting visually compelling, carefully choreographed sequences while exploring the psychological and emotional dimensions of McCall's character. This approach has distinguished the series within the action genre, emphasizing both entertainment and thematic depth. The continuation of these elements will likely define The Equalizer 4, ensuring continuity with its predecessors while potentially introducing new thematic and stylistic innovations. In terms of global reception, the franchise has achieved significant box office success and critical acclaim, particularly for Denzel Washington's performance and the direction of Antoine Fuqua. Audiences have responded positively to the blend of character depth and action spectacle, resulting in a loyal fanbase that eagerly anticipates subsequent installments. The Equalizer 4, therefore, carries both the expectation of meeting these established standards and the challenge of innovating within the familiar framework. The film's success will depend on balancing audience expectations, narrative coherence, and the execution of action sequences that are both engaging and emotionally resonant. The future of the franchise beyond The Equalizer 4 remains open to interpretation. Denzel Washington's remarks about the possibility of a fifth installment indicate that the character's story could continue further, exploring additional dimensions of McCall's life, history, and ethical challenges. However, decisions about the continuation of the series will likely depend on the commercial performance, critical reception, and creative direction of the fourth film. The franchise's longevity will also be influenced by audience engagement, narrative freshness, and the ability to maintain the balance between action-driven spectacle and character-centered storytelling that has defined its success. In conclusion, The Equalizer 4 represents a continuation of a franchise that has blended action, intelligence, and moral exploration in a manner that distinguishes it from typical action films. While much about the fourth installment remains speculative, including plot details, supporting cast, director involvement, trailer releases, and the release date, the involvement of Denzel Washington provides a degree of continuity and assurance of quality. Fans are encouraged to rely on official announcements for accurate information and to remain cautious regarding unverified trailers and speculative news. The franchise's established themes of justice, redemption, and ethical vigilance are expected to persist, providing a narrative and stylistic continuity that aligns with audience expectations and the character's established legacy. The anticipation surrounding The Equalizer 4 has become a significant point of interest among fans of the franchise, reflecting both the enduring appeal of Robert McCall as a character and the broader cultural impact of the series as a whole. The character of McCall originated in the 1980s television series created by Michael Sloan and Richard Lindheim, which aired on CBS from 1985 to 1989. In this original iteration, McCall is portrayed as a former intelligence officer who leverages his specialized skills to assist individuals facing situations of grave danger or injustice. The television series emphasized a balance between suspense, moral contemplation, and procedural storytelling, establishing McCall as a figure of moral authority who operates outside the conventional bounds of law enforcement. The series' narrative structure allowed McCall to encounter a wide range of characters, each with unique problems, and to apply his intelligence and tactical expertise to resolve situations in ways that were both clever and morally resonant. Transitioning from television to film, the first cinematic adaptation, released in 2014, brought Antoine Fuqua's directorial vision to the story, with Denzel Washington embodying the role of McCall. Washington's performance was widely lauded for its intensity and depth, offering a portrayal that balanced physical prowess with psychological nuance. The 2014 film modernized the setting and stakes, situating McCall in an urban environment where the prevalence of organized crime and systemic corruption created fertile ground for his interventions. The narrative retained the core moral themes of the original series while introducing high-stakes action sequences and cinematic techniques that highlighted McCall's strategic thinking, patience, and lethal efficiency. One of the film's distinguishing characteristics was its deliberate pacing. Scenes of introspection and moral reflection were interwoven with meticulously choreographed action sequences, providing audiences with both emotional engagement and adrenaline-driven excitement. The sequel, The Equalizer 2, released in 2018, expanded on McCall's character development by exploring his personal history, relationships, and the ethical implications of his actions. Again directed by Antoine Fuqua, the film emphasized loyalty, vengeance, and the consequences of vigilante justice. By situating McCall against a backdrop of morally ambiguous situations, the sequel provided opportunities to explore complex themes, including trust, betrayal, and the long-term effects of violence on both the perpetrator and those around him. The narrative structure maintained a tension between McCall's calm, methodical demeanor and the violent chaos he navigates, reinforcing the character's archetype as both a protector and a force of retribution. This duality, combining moral clarity with lethal capability, has become a defining feature of the franchise, resonating strongly with audiences and contributing to the series' commercial success. The Equalizer 3, released in 2023, represented what many perceived as the culmination of the film series. In interviews surrounding the film, both Fuqua and Washington suggested that the narrative arc might conclude with this installment, implying that McCall's journey could reach its natural endpoint. Nevertheless, in the entertainment industry, declarations of finality are often fluid, particularly in franchises with strong fan engagement and commercial viability. The third film continued to explore the balance between action, suspense, and moral reflection, emphasizing not only McCall's skills but also the emotional and psychological dimensions of his character. Themes such as justice, personal responsibility, and the cost of violence were further examined, providing a sense of closure while leaving the door open for potential narrative expansion. Discussions about The Equalizer 4 are largely speculative but grounded in statements from key figures associated with the franchise. Reports suggest that Denzel Washington has expressed willingness to return for additional installments, indicating the potential for both a fourth and fifth film. Antoine Fuqua's involvement is less certain, though rumors have speculated about his possible return as director, given his integral role in defining the tone and style of the cinematic series. Despite this, there has been no official production announcement, release date, or confirmed casting information. The ambiguity surrounding the project has created a mixture of anticipation and skepticism, with fans, media outlets, and industry insiders all contributing to ongoing speculation. While some online trailers and promotional content have circulated, many have been debunked as fan-made or artificial creations, further complicating the public perception of the film's development status. The potential plot for The Equalizer 4, though unconfirmed, can be inferred from both the narrative patterns of previous films and the character traits of Robert McCall. McCall is consistently portrayed as a man of moral clarity and strategic intelligence, whose actions are guided by an unwavering commitment to justice. Any continuation of the franchise would likely explore new threats that test both his skills and his ethical boundaries. These threats could take the form of organized criminal networks, technologically sophisticated adversaries, or situations that directly challenge McCall's personal code. Additionally, the narrative could examine the consequences of McCall's past actions, offering opportunities to explore themes of redemption, loyalty, and the long-term effects of vigilantism. The introduction of new characters, both allies and antagonists, could further enrich the story, providing fresh conflicts while maintaining continuity with the established cinematic universe. Casting considerations for the hypothetical fourth film are naturally centered on Denzel Washington, whose portrayal of McCall has become iconic. Supporting characters from previous films, including those who provide moral support or technical assistance, might also return to maintain narrative continuity. Additionally, new characters could be introduced to expand the story world and provide new challenges for McCall. The careful balance between returning characters and new additions is essential to sustaining audience engagement, offering both familiarity and novelty. In speculative discussions, potential casting choices have included rising stars in the action genre as well as established actors capable of delivering compelling performances alongside Washington. The casting strategy would likely aim to reinforce the franchise's combination of emotional depth, moral complexity, and high-intensity action. The choice of director and production team is another critical factor in shaping The Equalizer 4. Antoine Fuqua's prior involvement established a stylistic and thematic precedent characterized by a combination of realistic action sequences, intense character focus, and moral complexity. Should Fuqua return, audiences could expect a continuation of this approach, with carefully choreographed combat scenes, precise cinematography, and attention to character-driven narrative moments. A new director could introduce stylistic variation, potentially emphasizing psychological tension, visual experimentation, or narrative innovation. The production design, cinematography, and sound design would remain crucial in crafting an immersive cinematic experience, ensuring that action sequences are grounded in realism while providing dramatic and visual spectacle. The release date for The Equalizer 4, if it were to be produced, remains speculative. Based on typical production timelines and the schedules of high-profile actors, release windows could range from 2026 to 2027. Factors influencing the timing include script development, casting, pre-production logistics, filming schedules, post-production requirements, and marketing strategy. Major studios often target summer or holiday release periods for blockbuster action films, maximizing both visibility and box office potential. Marketing campaigns would likely include teasers, trailers, press interviews, and promotional events designed to generate anticipation and sustain fan engagement. Strategic planning would also involve consideration of competing releases, seasonal audience trends, and international distribution factors, reflecting the global appeal of the franchise. The conversation surrounding The Equalizer 4 also provides insight into the relationship between fandom, media speculation, and industry realities. Fans of the franchise have generated extensive content, including theories, predictions, and artistic interpretations, which have fueled public interest in a potential sequel. Media outlets often amplify these discussions, sometimes presenting speculative information as near-confirmed news. Studios and filmmakers must navigate these dynamics carefully, balancing creative vision with commercial considerations and logistical constraints. The result is a complex ecosystem in which The Equalizer 4 exists as both a projected narrative possibility and a subject of cultural discourse, reflecting the enduring fascination with Robert McCall and the themes he embodies. The cultural impact of the franchise cannot be overstated. The character of McCall resonates with audiences because of his combination of moral clarity, strategic intellect, and physical capability. The films have consistently explored themes of justice, personal responsibility, and ethical action, offering both entertainment and moral reflection. Moreover, the franchise has influenced the broader action genre, demonstrating how character-driven storytelling can be integrated with high-intensity action sequences to create a compelling cinematic experience. This influence extends to emerging filmmakers, actors, and screenwriters who draw inspiration from the franchise's ability to balance spectacle with thoughtful narrative. The technical aspects of the franchise, including stunt coordination, cinematography, and music composition, have contributed significantly to the immersive quality of the films. Action sequences are meticulously planned and executed, often combining hand-to-hand combat, tactical maneuvers, and strategic use of the environment. Cinematography emphasizes clarity, tension, and visual storytelling, ensuring that audiences can follow both the emotional and physical dimensions of the action. Music and sound design enhance the narrative, reinforcing dramatic tension and emphasizing character moments. These technical elements, combined with strong performances and narrative depth, create a cinematic experience that engages both intellectually and viscerally. In summary, The Equalizer 4 occupies a complex and multifaceted position within contemporary cinema. While the film has not been officially confirmed, the anticipation surrounding its potential existence reflects the enduring popularity of the franchise, the iconic status of Denzel Washington's portrayal of Robert McCall, and the thematic richness of the narrative universe. The history of the franchise, from its origins as a television series through the successful cinematic trilogy, demonstrates both the challenges and opportunities inherent in continuing a beloved narrative. Fans, media, and industry observers continue to engage with the project as a combination of hope, speculation, and narrative imagination, highlighting the cultural and artistic significance of the series. Until official announcements are made, The Equalizer 4 exists primarily as a projected continuation of McCall's story, representing both the enduring appeal of the character and the possibilities of future cinematic storytelling within this morally complex, action-driven universe. To understand the potential trajectory of The Equalizer 4, it is essential to revisit the narrative and thematic foundations established by the previous films. The first installment set a precedent for how the franchise balances intense action sequences with the psychological depth of Robert McCall. In that film, McCall's life as a retired intelligence officer is characterized by meticulous routines, a quiet existence, and a methodical approach to problem-solving. This depiction of a disciplined, almost ascetic lifestyle underscores the character's internal balance and moral clarity, traits that have become the hallmark of his persona. The plot of the first film revolves around McCall being drawn back into a world of violence when a young woman working in his neighborhood is exploited by human traffickers. This narrative serves multiple functions. It situates McCall as a protector of the vulnerable, demonstrates the stakes of the criminal world he confronts, and sets the tone for his calculated yet emotionally charged approach to justice. The action in the first film is notable not only for its choreography but also for its narrative significance. Each fight, chase, or confrontation is designed to reveal something about McCall's skills, ethical considerations, and strategic thinking. Unlike more conventional action heroes who rely solely on brute force, McCall's intelligence, observation, and preparation are central to his success. These elements create a sense of realism and credibility, encouraging the audience to engage with the character on both a visceral and intellectual level. The cinematography complements this approach, using tight framing, muted color palettes, and dynamic editing to emphasize tension and immersion. This stylistic choice reflects Antoine Fuqua's commitment to grounded action, distinguishing the franchise from more fantastical or CGI-heavy alternatives. The second film expanded on the moral and emotional complexity introduced in the first. The Equalizer 2 not only offered more elaborate action sequences but also delved into McCall's past relationships, personal code, and lingering sense of loss. Themes of loyalty and betrayal are prominent, particularly as McCall investigates the death of a close friend and colleague. This narrative development highlights the tension between personal attachment and professional detachment, illustrating the emotional costs of his chosen path. The film also broadened the scope of McCall's intervention in society, portraying him as a figure who confronts systemic injustices, further solidifying the franchise's engagement with ethical dilemmas beyond mere physical confrontations. The third installment continued this trend, providing resolution to some of McCall's personal arcs while leaving space for potential future conflicts. Set in Italy, The Equalizer 3 positioned McCall in a new environment, confronting local criminal elements while navigating unfamiliar social and cultural terrain. The change in setting not only refreshed the visual and narrative landscape but also presented challenges that tested McCall's adaptability, strategic thinking, and ethical judgment in novel ways. The success of the third film affirmed the franchise's formula, a balance of character-driven storytelling, high-stakes moral choices, and meticulously crafted action sequences. It also raised questions about the sustainability of the series, as fans speculated whether the arc of Robert McCall could continue in meaningful ways. With The Equalizer 4, these questions become particularly salient. The creative team faces the dual challenge of maintaining continuity with established character traits while introducing new narrative elements that justify another installment. Given the franchise's history, it is reasonable to anticipate that McCall will once again encounter individuals or groups in peril, requiring him to act decisively and often outside legal frameworks. The stakes are likely to be elevated, potentially involving organized crime, corporate corruption, or politically charged conflicts. The inclusion of such elements would be consistent with the series' established patterns, providing both external tension and opportunities for introspective exploration of McCall's ethical principles. Another significant consideration is the development of supporting characters. While Denzel Washington remains the central figure, the interplay with secondary characters has historically added depth and complexity to the narrative. In prior films, allies have served as narrative foils, moral benchmarks, or catalysts for McCall's decisions, while antagonists have been crafted with their own motivations, often reflecting societal issues or personal vendettas. The selection and development of these characters in the Equalizer 4 will be crucial in sustaining audience engagement and ensuring that McCall's interventions carry both emotional weight and narrative significance. Casting decisions, therefore, are not merely matters of star power but are integral to the storytelling architecture. The directorial approach will also shape the film's aesthetic and thematic resonance. Antoine Fuqua's prior work demonstrates a commitment to realism, precision in action choreography, and a nuanced understanding of pacing and tension. Should he return, audiences can expect that the Equalizer 4 will continue to employ visual storytelling techniques that reinforce character development while delivering cinematic thrills. Fuqua's approach to framing, lighting, and scene composition often mirrors the psychological state of McCall, creating an immersive experience that combines narrative and sensory engagement. Even subtle choices, such as camera angles during fight sequences or the use of ambient sound, contribute to a heightened sense of realism and urgency, which are trademarks of the franchise. Music and sound design are additional components that enhance the storytelling. Previous films have utilized minimalist, atmospheric scores that underscore tension without overwhelming the narrative. The Equalizer 4 is likely to continue this approach, using musical cues to reflect McCall's internal state, heighten suspense, and punctuate moments of action. The interplay of silence, environmental sounds, and orchestrated motifs can create a rhythm that mirrors the methodical, strategic mind of the protagonist, reinforcing his presence as both observer and actor within each scene. Marketing and audience engagement are particularly important considerations for a high-profile franchise like The Equalizer. The announcement of a fourth installment inevitably generates speculation and discussion across fan communities, media outlets, and social platforms. Strategic marketing will likely leverage Washington's star power, the continuity of the franchise, and the anticipation of elevated stakes to build excitement. Trailers, teasers, and social media campaigns can offer glimpses of narrative direction, character dynamics, and action sequences, providing audiences with a sense of familiarity while introducing fresh elements. However, care must be taken to balance disclosure with mystery, preserving the suspense and moral intrigue that define the series. The cultural impact of the Equalizer franchise also warrants attention. The series engages with themes of social justice, individual agency, and moral responsibility, resonating with audiences who appreciate action films with ethical complexity. McCall's interventions often highlight systemic failures, offering commentary on the limitations of institutional authority and the necessity of personal courage. The franchise's popularity can thus be attributed not only to its technical execution and star power but also to its capacity to address enduring human concerns through the lens of a vigilante narrative. The Equalizer 4 will likely continue this tradition, reflecting contemporary social anxieties while situating McCall as a moral agent within an increasingly complex world. Speculative narrative directions for the Equalizer 4 could include international settings, new forms of criminal enterprise, or technologically sophisticated antagonists. Each scenario presents opportunities to challenge McCall's ingenuity, ethical judgment, and physical abilities. For instance, an antagonist employing digital surveillance or cybercrime could force McCall to adapt his strategies, integrating intellect and action in novel ways. Similarly, exploring geopolitical or transnational crime networks could expand the scope of the narrative while maintaining the franchise's core focus on individual moral responsibility. Such developments would demonstrate both narrative evolution and adherence to established thematic principles. From an academic perspective, the franchise offers a case study in character consistency, narrative elasticity, and the adaptation of television properties into feature-length cinematic universes. McCall's enduring appeal lies in the careful balance between physical prowess, moral integrity, and psychological depth. Each installment of the series reinforces these traits while allowing for situational diversity, illustrating how a central character can be both a stable anchor and a vehicle for exploring new ethical and narrative territories. The Equalizer 4, in this context, represents not merely a continuation of action sequences but a further exploration of McCall's role as a moral agent navigating a complex, often ambiguous world. The anticipation for the Equalizer 4, although not officially confirmed, is fueled largely by the enduring popularity of the franchise and the iconic presence of Denzel Washington as Robert McCall. In considering the continuation of the series, it is essential to understand not only the narrative foundation laid by the previous films but also the cinematic and cultural impact they have had. The first three films have established a pattern of carefully constructed action sequences, interwoven with ethical and emotional considerations, making McCall's story more than just a vigilante action series. Each installment has contributed layers of complexity to the protagonist, exploring his moral compass, his past as a covert operative, and the delicate balance he maintains between personal peace and external chaos. The potential fourth installment would need to respect this intricate foundation while introducing fresh elements capable of engaging both returning audiences and new viewers. The character of Robert McCall is unique within the action genre because his approach to justice is deliberate, precise, and strategic. Unlike typical action heroes who rely primarily on brute force or exaggerated physical prowess, McCall uses intelligence, observation, and tactical planning to outmaneuver adversaries. This cerebral approach, coupled with moments of intense physical action, creates a compelling duality in the character. He is both methodical and unstoppable. Any narrative continuation in a hypothetical Equalizer 4 would need to explore further dimensions of McCall's capabilities. It could examine how his strategic mind adapts to even more sophisticated criminal networks, perhaps involving international crime syndicates, cybercrime, or systemic corruption, which would elevate the stakes beyond localized conflicts and introduce a global element to the story. The potential plot for a fourth film could also explore McCall's personal evolution. In previous films, the character has demonstrated a commitment to justice that sometimes borders on obsession, and a fourth installment could delve deeper into the psychological ramifications of such a life. Questions of morality, justice, and the consequences of taking the law into one's own hands would likely be central themes. Furthermore, the narrative might explore McCall's interactions with law enforcement and other morally ambiguous characters, testing his principles and highlighting the tension between right and wrong. This thematic exploration would continue to differentiate the franchise from conventional action films by integrating introspection and ethical complexity into high-stakes scenarios. Casting for a potential fourth film would undoubtedly focus on Denzel Washington reprising his role as Robert McCall. Washington's portrayal has been a defining element of the franchise, combining gravitas, intensity, and subtle emotional depth. Supporting roles could include a mixture of returning characters from the previous films, potentially friends, allies, or protégés, as well as new characters designed to challenge McCall in novel ways. Antagonists in a fourth installment would likely be multidimensional, with motivations and intelligence that provide a credible threat to McCall's abilities. The introduction of morally complex villains would align with the franchise's established emphasis on psychological tension and strategic conflict, rather than relying solely on physical confrontations. From a production perspective, Antoine Fuqua's direction has been pivotal in defining the aesthetic and pacing of the series. His approach combines cinematic realism with carefully choreographed action sequences, emphasizing tension, suspense, and methodical execution. Fuqua's understanding of pacing, lighting, and camera work allows for sequences that are both visually striking and narratively meaningful. In a hypothetical Equalizer 4, maintaining this directorial vision would be essential to preserve continuity in tone and style. The production team would need to integrate high-quality cinematography, realistic stunts, and immersive set design to create an environment in which McCall's meticulous planning and execution feel authentic and engaging. Practical effects, combined with selective CGI, would likely be employed to enhance the realism of action sequences while maintaining the grounded feel that has become a trademark of the franchise. Scriptwriting for The Equalizer 4 would involve balancing multiple narrative elements, action, character development, and thematic depth. The screenplay would likely build upon the franchise's history, revisiting unresolved threads from previous films, while introducing new challenges and adversaries. Dialogue would need to reflect McCall's intelligence, calm demeanor, and moral clarity, providing insight into his thought processes and motivations. Additionally, the script would explore supporting characters' arcs, ensuring that their actions and development contribute meaningfully to the narrative. Strategic pacing, suspenseful tension, and climactic confrontations would remain central to the screenplay, consistent with the franchise's established formula. Marketing strategies for a potential fourth installment would leverage the franchise's established recognition, Denzel Washington's star power, and the anticipation built from prior films. Promotional campaigns might include teasers emphasizing suspenseful sequences, strategic ingenuity, and moral stakes, alongside interviews with key cast members discussing the evolution of their characters. The franchise's history of global box office success would also inform international marketing strategies, tailoring campaigns to regions where previous films performed particularly well. Social media engagement, viral marketing, and interactive promotions could serve to maintain audience excitement while bridging the gap between official announcements and the film's eventual release. Fan speculation and online engagement have played a significant role in shaping perceptions of The Equalizer 4. Rumors, speculative trailers, and discussions on platforms such as YouTube and social media have amplified interest in the film, despite the absence of official confirmation. These fan-driven initiatives reflect both the franchise's popularity and the audience's desire for continuity in McCall's story. While such speculation often includes inaccuracies, particularly the circulation of AI-generated or fan-made trailers, it also demonstrates the franchise's cultural resonance and the emotional investment of its audience. In addition to narrative and production considerations, potential thematic elements of a fourth film might include examining systemic injustice, personal responsibility, and the ethical dilemmas inherent in vigilante action. The franchise has consistently emphasized that McCall's interventions are calculated and morally guided, rather than impulsive or purely violent. A continuation of this thematic focus could explore the tension between personal vengeance and societal impact, highlighting the nuanced moral universe in which McCall operates. Incorporating these elements into a new narrative would reinforce the franchise's reputation for blending action with ethical inquiry, setting it apart from more formulaic action films. The commercial viability of a fourth installment would likely depend on a combination of factors, including Denzel Washington's involvement, script quality, production value, and alignment with audience expectations. Historical performance of the franchise, combined with continued public interest in vigilante narratives, suggests that a well-executed Equalizer 4 could achieve both critical and commercial success. Studios would need to carefully manage production timelines, marketing campaigns, and distribution strategies to maximize the film's impact, particularly given the heightened expectations generated by the prior three films. As anticipation builds for The Equalizer 4, discussions among fans, critics, and industry insiders have increasingly focused on how the film might both honor the established narrative and introduce new elements that keep the franchise fresh. The earlier films in the series established a pattern. McCall is drawn out of a seemingly quiet life by injustice, which catalyzes a series of events that require him to apply his lethal skills and moral judgment. The third film, which appeared to close McCall's chapter, ended with a sense of narrative finality. However, Denzel Washington's confirmation of additional installments suggests that the character's story is far from complete. This raises intriguing questions about narrative continuity, character evolution, and thematic expansion. Analysts speculate that The Equalizer may fourth explore previously untapped aspects of McCall's life, including his interactions with international crime networks, covert organizations, and morally complex scenarios that challenge the very principles he has lived by. One of the most intriguing aspects of the fourth film lies in the potential exploration of Robert McCall's personal history. While previous films have offered glimpses into his past, including his time as a U.S. Marine and his experience with intelligence operations, there remains a significant narrative gap regarding how these experiences shaped his moral and tactical framework. The Equalizer May 4th sees this opportunity to provide flashbacks or narrative exposition that delve into formative experiences, revealing how McCall developed the combination of empathy, strategic thinking, and combat proficiency that define his actions. Such a focus would not only satisfy fan curiosity but also provide narrative justification for the increasingly complex challenges he is expected to face in this installment. A key speculative plot thread involves McCall confronting an international syndicate, potentially spanning Europe and the Middle East. Media reports and industry rumors suggest that the narrative could involve a network of terrorists or criminal organizations threatening political stability or civilian safety on a large scale. While these reports remain unconfirmed, they align with the franchise's established escalation pattern, in which each film expands McCall's scope of operation. From addressing localized crime in Boston to tackling organized human trafficking networks in the second film, the series has progressively broadened McCall's battlefield. An international focus would therefore represent a natural evolution, allowing the filmmakers to integrate diverse locations, complex logistical challenges, and heightened stakes, all while maintaining the moral core that defines McCall's character. The introduction of new characters, both allies and antagonists, is another focal point of speculation. Previous films have shown that McCall's interactions with secondary characters often serve dual purposes. They provide emotional depth and establish narrative catalysts for his actions. In The Equalizer 4, potential allies could include intelligence operatives, journalists, or civilians caught in precarious situations, each offering unique perspectives or resources that influence McCall's approach. Conversely, antagonists are likely to be multidimensional figures, perhaps leaders of the criminal networks McCall confronts, whose motives and strategies present ethical dilemmas and tactical challenges. Unlike earlier villains, who were often localized or narrowly motivated, these adversaries may operate within complex social, political, or technological frameworks, creating a narrative that challenges McCall's adaptability and moral decision-making in unprecedented ways. The visual and cinematic style of The Equalizer 4 is expected to build upon the foundation established by Antoine Fuqua's direction in previous films. Fuqua's approach emphasizes realism, kinetic action, and strategic camera work that immerses audiences in the intensity of McCall's missions. Long, continuous shots of hand-to-hand combat, interspersed with rapid cuts during high-tension moments, create a dynamic visual rhythm that reinforces both the stakes and McCall's tactical acumen. In addition to combat sequences, Fuqua is likely to employ visual storytelling techniques that reflect McCall's psychological state, using lighting, composition, and color grading to convey tension, moral ambiguity, and emotional resonance. The incorporation of international locations would further enhance the visual palette, providing varied environments that range from urban centers to remote landscapes, each contributing to the narrative texture. Action choreography in The Equalizer 4 is expected to maintain the franchise's hallmark realism while incorporating innovative elements suited to the expanded scale. McCall's combat style, which combines precision, situational awareness, and resourcefulness, allows for creative engagement with the environment. Rumors suggest that the fourth film may include sequences in unconventional locations, such as narrow European alleyways, high-rise buildings, or moving vehicles, requiring a sophisticated blend of martial arts, tactical improvisation, and environmental awareness. These sequences not only serve as spectacle but also as narrative devices, revealing McCall's problem-solving abilities, ethical considerations, and adaptability under pressure. Furthermore, the choreography may integrate technology-driven threats, such as drones or surveillance systems, reflecting contemporary global challenges and forcing McCall to adapt his strategies. Thematically, The Equalizer 4 is likely to continue the franchise's exploration of justice, morality, and personal responsibility. McCall's actions are consistently guided by a personal ethical code, even when operating outside conventional legal frameworks. This tension between legality and morality is central to the narrative, creating space for philosophical inquiry and audience reflection. In the fourth installment, the expansion of the threat landscape may heighten these ethical stakes, presenting scenarios in which McCall must weigh the consequences of intervention against potential collateral damage, the limits of authority, and the responsibilities of those with power. By situating McCall in morally complex environments, the film has the potential to explore broader questions about global justice, personal accountability, and the cost of action versus inaction. Denzel Washington's performance is anticipated to anchor the film, providing continuity and depth. Washington's portrayal of McCall is defined by controlled intensity, nuanced emotional expression, and a commanding presence that conveys both authority and empathy. In The Equalizer 4, the actor may have the opportunity to further develop McCall's character, exploring the psychological toll of repeated exposure to violence, the challenges of maintaining ethical integrity, and the evolution of his worldview in response to global threats. Interviews and statements from Washington indicate a commitment to authenticity and character consistency, suggesting that McCall's development will remain grounded, even amid the heightened spectacle of international operations and complex narrative arcs. The production design of The Equalizer 4 is expected to reflect both realism and cinematic flair. Locations, set pieces, and props will likely be carefully curated to enhance the authenticity of the narrative while providing visual interest. The use of practical effects, combined with selective digital enhancements, can create immersive action sequences without sacrificing believability. Costuming and character presentation will similarly serve narrative and thematic purposes, reflecting McCall's understated persona, the professional and cultural identity of allies, and the tactical sophistication of adversaries. This attention to detail contributes to a cohesive cinematic world that supports both story and character development. Music and sound design are additional elements that will play a critical role in shaping the film's atmosphere. The franchise has historically used a combination of minimalistic scoring and diegetic sound to heighten tension and underscore emotional moments. The Equalizer may forth expand on this approach, integrating musical cues that reflect the global context, technological elements, and heightened stakes of the narrative. Sound effects, including the auditory texture of combat, environmental ambience, and urban or international soundscapes, will reinforce narrative immersion and emotional engagement, allowing audiences to experience the tension, urgency, and complexity of McCall's missions viscerally. Marketing and audience engagement for The Equalizer 4 will likely rely on strategic reveals, including teaser trailers, promotional interviews, and selective leaks that maintain suspense while generating anticipation. Previous films have benefited from focused campaigns that highlight both the star power of Denzel Washington and the franchise's blend of action and moral complexity. Given the increased global scope of the fourth film, marketing strategies may also emphasize international settings, expanded narrative stakes, and innovative action sequences to appeal to a broader audience while retaining the core fan base. Social media engagement, interactive content, and controlled information releases may further enhance anticipation, creating a dialogue between creators and audiences that sustains interest over time. The reception of The Equalizer 4, though impossible to predict with certainty, will likely be influenced by its ability to balance continuity with innovation. Fans and critics will assess the film based on narrative coherence, character development, action choreography, thematic depth, and visual execution. Success will depend on maintaining the moral and ethical foundation established in previous films, while delivering fresh challenges, characters, and narrative arcs that justify the continuation of the series. The inclusion of international elements, complex antagonists, and morally ambiguous scenarios may elevate the film's critical reception, positioning it as both an action spectacle and a thought-provoking exploration of justice in a complex world. The Equalizer franchise, as a modern cinematic phenomenon, is notable not merely for its action sequences but for the meticulous construction of its central character, Robert McCall. Unlike typical action heroes who rely primarily on physical prowess or brute force, McCall operates as a disciplined strategist, blending intelligence, observation, and moral reasoning to achieve his objectives. This distinction is crucial to understanding both the narrative appeal and the philosophical underpinnings of the franchise. McCall's background as a former intelligence operative, combined with his experience in high-stakes covert operations, enables him to read situations with extraordinary acuity, identify hidden threats, and exploit weaknesses in his adversary's strategies. Each confrontation he engages in is therefore not only a physical battle but also a tactical contest of wits, where anticipation, psychological insight, and resourcefulness determine the outcome. This approach reflects a deliberate choice by the filmmakers to position McCall as an action hero who exemplifies intellect alongside physical capability, elevating the series above the conventions of the standard vigilante genre. From the outset of the first film, audiences are introduced to a McCall who is consciously attempting to distance himself from a violent past. The narrative juxtaposes his desire for a quiet, disciplined life with the inevitability of conflict when confronted with injustice. This tension between restraint and intervention is a thematic cornerstone of the franchise. In many ways, McCall's journey reflects a modern meditation on responsibility and moral accountability. He is acutely aware of the consequences of inaction, particularly for those who are powerless against systemic corruption, organized crime, or personal exploitation. The films therefore operate on both narrative and ethical levels, as McCall's actions prompt viewers to consider questions of justice, individual agency, and the moral implications of extra-legal intervention. The storytelling is thus multi-layered, appealing simultaneously to audiences seeking high-intensity action and those interested in psychological and ethical depth. As the series progressed into its sequels, the scope of McCall's engagement expanded beyond local criminal networks to include international threats and highly organized syndicates. The second film in the rebooted franchise demonstrated McCall's ability to adapt to increasingly complex environments while maintaining his moral compass and operational discipline. Here, the filmmakers emphasize the global dimension of injustice, highlighting how corruption, exploitation, and human suffering transcend geographical boundaries. McCall's interventions, therefore, are not merely reactive but indicative of a larger moral framework in which individuals who possess extraordinary skills bear a responsibility to act in the face of systemic wrongs. This thematic expansion adds narrative richness to the series, positioning McCall as a universal symbol of justice and ethical vigilance, whose personal code resonates across diverse cultural and geopolitical contexts. The third installment, released in 2023, appeared to conclude a narrative arc that had been carefully built over nearly a decade. It explored both the culmination of McCall's personal development and the consequences of his vigilantism, emphasizing the emotional and psychological weight of a life dedicated to protecting others. In doing so, the film reinforced the dual nature of the franchise. It is as much concerned with the internal evolution of a complex protagonist as it is with the external mechanics of action and suspense. The audience is repeatedly confronted with the question of balance between moral imperatives and practical consequences. McCall's interventions, while often necessary and effective, inevitably carry costs, both personal and societal. This nuanced portrayal of vigilantism, combined with tightly choreographed action sequences, has become a hallmark of the series and provides a template for the anticipated narrative depth of the Equalizer 4. Denzel Washington's embodiment of Robert McCall is central to the franchise's identity. Washington brings to the role a combination of gravitas, subtlety, and physical credibility that has consistently elevated the material. His nuanced performance allows for moments of introspection and vulnerability amidst scenes of intense action, grounding the character in human realism. This interplay between external competence and internal contemplation is critical for understanding why audiences connect with McCall as both a hero and a moral figure. The actor's commitment to authenticity, both in terms of performance and in physically preparing for action sequences, ensures that McCall's interventions feel deliberate, calculated, and believable. The consistency of this portrayal across 3 films has established a standard that any fourth installment must maintain to preserve continuity and audience engagement. The anticipation surrounding The Equalizer 4 is compounded by Denzel Washington's public statements expressing interest in continuing the franchise. While these remarks generate excitement, they also highlight the uncertainty that currently surrounds the project. The absence of official confirmation regarding the director, supporting cast, or plot details leaves a vacuum filled by speculation, rumors, and fan-created content. This environment of partial information necessitates careful distinction between verified sources and unsubstantiated claims. In the digital age, where AI-generated trailers and social media speculation circulate widely, it becomes especially important for audiences to rely on official announcements and credible entertainment news outlets for accurate information. The responsible consumption of such information will ensure that expectations for The Equalizer 4 are grounded in reality rather than conjecture. The anticipation surrounding the Equalizer 4 represents not only the enduring fascination with the character of Robert McCall but also the broader cultural resonance of the franchise, which has successfully bridged television and cinema over nearly 4 decades. Robert McCall, first introduced in the 1980s CBS television series created by Michael Sloan and Richard Lindheim, was portrayed as a former intelligence operative who, after retiring from government service, dedicated his life to helping ordinary people facing extraordinary threats. The original series ran from 1985 to 1989 and was structured around episodic narratives in which McCall used his unique combination of intelligence, strategy, and moral resolve to assist individuals confronting injustice, danger, or exploitation. The series stood out for its emphasis on moral responsibility and ethical action, framing McCall as a figure whose personal code guided his every intervention. Each episode allowed the audience to witness his meticulous problem-solving skills, his attention to detail, and his unwavering commitment to justice, all while operating outside the conventional structures of law enforcement. When the franchise transitioned to cinema in 2014, director Antoine Fuqua undertook the task of modernizing the character for contemporary audiences, casting Denzel Washington as McCall. Washington's portrayal was widely acclaimed for capturing both the intellectual and physical dimensions of the character. The first film successfully translated the series' core themes into a cinematic context, situating McCall in an urban environment rife with organized crime, corruption, and systemic inequality. While the narrative maintained a moralistic underpinning, the action sequences were amplified to match the expectations of modern blockbuster audiences, blending tightly choreographed combat with strategic intelligence and psychological tension. The pacing of the film allowed moments of introspection and character development to coexist with scenes of high-octane action, ensuring that audiences engaged with both the moral complexity and visceral excitement of McCall's interventions. In the 2014 film, McCall is characterized not only by his lethal proficiency in hand-to-hand combat and tactical maneuvers but also by a disciplined and reflective personality. He meticulously observes the behaviors, routines, and vulnerabilities of both allies and adversaries before acting, emphasizing intelligence over brute force. The film also introduced audiences to the duality inherent in McCall's character, a calm, unassuming demeanor masking a highly capable, methodical force when confronted with injustice. This balance of intellect and physicality became a hallmark of the franchise, setting it apart from other action-oriented series that often prioritize spectacle over psychological depth. The Equalizer 2, released in 2018, expanded upon McCall's personal and emotional dimensions, exploring his relationships, his past, and the ethical implications of his vigilante actions. The sequel maintained the franchise's signature balance of tension, strategy, and moral reflection, but with a deeper exploration of loyalty, betrayal, and the consequences of taking justice into one's own hands. McCall's character navigates a morally ambiguous world, facing threats that challenge not only his physical capabilities but also his ethical framework. By presenting dilemmas that require careful judgment and consideration of potential repercussions, the film reinforced the series' thematic focus on responsibility, consequence, and personal integrity. In addition, The Equalizer 2 enriched the narrative universe by introducing new characters and adversaries, some of whom would challenge McCall intellectually as much as physically, reinforcing the franchise's dedication to strategic complexity in its storytelling. With the release of The Equalizer 3 in 2023, the franchise reached a perceived narrative climax, with McCall's story potentially approaching its endpoint. The film continued the thematic and stylistic elements of its predecessors, emphasizing moral complexity, strategic action, and psychological depth. Both Antoine Fuqua and Denzel Washington suggested that this installment might serve as a conclusion to the series, though the entertainment industry's fluid approach to sequels and franchise expansion leaves room for ambiguity. The third film explored new narrative terrain by confronting McCall with adversaries that challenged his past decisions and moral convictions, emphasizing the long-term consequences of vigilantism and the psychological toll of living as a self-directed agent of justice. This installment maintained the franchise's signature tension between introspective character moments and high-stakes action sequences, further cementing its place as a thoughtful and commercially successful action series. Despite suggestions that the trilogy might conclude with the third film, discussions and rumors about the Equalizer 4 have persisted. Some reports indicate that Denzel Washington has expressed willingness to return for future installments, including a potential fourth and fifth film, though these statements do not constitute formal production confirmation. Antoine Fuqua's involvement in a fourth film remains uncertain, but his previous direction established the stylistic and thematic tone of the series, which would likely influence the narrative approach of any subsequent installment. While official announcements regarding production, casting, or release date are absent, the combination of fan anticipation, media speculation, and the franchise's commercial viability has kept the notion of the Equalizer 4 alive in public discourse. The potential narrative direction for the Equalizer 4 can be extrapolated from the established character traits of Robert McCall and the thematic patterns of the previous films. McCall consistently operates as a morally grounded, strategic, and highly capable figure whose actions are motivated by a profound sense of justice. Any continuation of the series would likely present new challenges that test both his skills and ethical boundaries, possibly involving international criminal organizations, technologically sophisticated adversaries, or personal conflicts that threaten the stability of his moral framework. The narrative could explore themes of accountability, redemption, and the consequences of past actions, providing both tension and emotional depth. Introducing new allies or adversaries would enable fresh narrative possibilities while preserving continuity with the established cinematic universe, ensuring that McCall's interventions remain both compelling and morally resonant. Casting considerations for a hypothetical fourth installment would naturally center on Denzel Washington, whose performance is synonymous with the character of McCall. The return of supporting characters, including those who provide technical expertise or moral support, would reinforce narrative continuity and audience engagement. New characters could serve multiple functions, presenting intellectual challenges, generating conflict, or expanding the story world. Casting strategy would need to balance familiar elements with innovative additions, ensuring that audiences experience both continuity and novelty, maintaining the franchise's distinctive blend of character-driven storytelling and action-oriented spectacle. The choice of director and production team is similarly crucial. Antoine Fuqua's prior work established a tone characterized by meticulous attention to character development, moral complexity, and action choreography that is both precise and immersive. Should Fuqua return, one might expect continuity in visual style, narrative pacing, and thematic exploration. Alternatively, a new director could reinterpret McCall's character, emphasizing psychological tension, visual innovation, or narrative experimentation while maintaining the ethical and moral underpinnings of the franchise. Technical elements such as cinematography, sound design, and action choreography would remain central, ensuring that combat sequences are realistic, dramatic, and visually compelling, while also supporting the narrative's emotional and ethical dimensions. Release date projections for the Equalizer 4 are currently speculative. Factors influencing potential timing include script development, casting schedules, pre-production logistics, principal photography, post-production, marketing strategy, and global distribution considerations. Based on historical patterns for blockbuster action franchises, the film might be positioned for a summer or holiday release to maximize visibility and box office potential. Marketing campaigns would likely involve multi-platform promotional strategies, including teasers, trailers, interviews, and fan engagement initiatives, designed to sustain anticipation and generate cultural momentum prior to the release. The coordination of release windows, especially in relation to competing films, would also influence strategic decisions, reflecting the global appeal and commercial importance of the franchise. The interplay between fandom, media speculation, and industry dynamics further complicates the discourse surrounding the Equalizer 4. Fans generate extensive content, including narrative theories, casting predictions, and imagined plot scenarios, which can influence media coverage and contribute to the perception of inevitability regarding a new installment. Media outlets, seeking engagement, often amplify these discussions, sometimes blurring the line between speculation and official information. Studios and filmmakers must navigate these dynamics carefully, balancing artistic intentions with commercial viability, audience expectations, and logistical realities. The result is a dynamic environment in which the Equalizer 4 exists as both a potential cinematic product and a cultural phenomenon shaped by anticipation, speculation, and a broader media ecosystem. The cultural significance of the franchise lies in its blending of moral complexity, strategic action, and character-driven narrative. Robert McCall's appeal extends beyond mere action heroism. He embodies the tension between ethical clarity and the exercise of extraordinary power, offering audiences a lens through which to explore questions of justice, responsibility, and consequence. The film's success demonstrates that audiences value narratives that combine thrilling action sequences with nuanced ethical exploration, highlighting the franchise's capacity to engage viewers on both visceral and intellectual levels. Additionally, the franchise has influenced the action genre more broadly, demonstrating that character-driven storytelling can coexist with cinematic spectacle, shaping emerging trends in both filmmaking and audience expectations. The technical elements of the franchise contribute significantly to its immersive quality. Action sequences are meticulously choreographed, blending hand-to-hand combat, environmental strategy, and tactical precision. Cinematography emphasizes clarity, tension, and emotional resonance, allowing audiences to follow both physical and psychological developments. Music and sound design reinforce dramatic moments, heightening suspense, emphasizing moral stakes, and supporting the narrative rhythm. Editing choices balance pacing and tension, ensuring that both character-driven and action-driven sequences maintain engagement and coherence. These technical achievements, combined with strong performances and narrative depth, establish a cinematic experience that is both thrilling and intellectually engaging. One of the most compelling aspects of the Equalizer franchise is the meticulous attention to McCall's methodology in confronting threats. Unlike traditional action heroes, McCall does not rush headlong into conflict, rather, he observes, analyzes, and constructs strategic responses to each challenge. This approach not only enhances the plausibility of his actions but also reinforces the intellectual aspect of his character. In prior films, audiences have seen McCall use everyday objects, improvisational tactics, and environmental advantages to neutralize adversaries, demonstrating both ingenuity and a commitment to precision. The Equalizer 4 is expected to build upon this formula, introducing scenarios that demand adaptive thinking and creative problem-solving, potentially integrating modern technology, surveillance systems, and complex social dynamics as narrative obstacles. Denzel Washington's portrayal of Robert McCall has been pivotal in shaping audience expectations and sustaining the franchise's appeal. Washington brings a combination of gravitas, physical presence, and nuanced emotional depth, qualities that distinguish McCall from archetypal action figures. His performances emphasize restraint, internal conflict, and moral deliberation, allowing viewers to engage with the character beyond the surface level of action. In The Equalizer 4, it is likely that Washington will continue to refine these qualities, portraying a McCall who has grown older, wiser, and perhaps more introspective, while remaining capable of decisive, forceful action when circumstances demand. Antoine Fuqua's directorial style, if he returns for the fourth installment, will play a crucial role in maintaining the franchise's visual and thematic continuity. Fuqua's previous work demonstrates a mastery of kinetic camera movement, precise editing, and atmospheric tension, all of which contribute to a visceral viewing experience. His approach often blurs the line between action and psychological drama, using visual cues, pacing, and composition to reflect the protagonist's inner state. In The Equalizer 4, Fuqua's potential involvement suggests that audiences can anticipate not only meticulously choreographed fight sequences but also nuanced visual storytelling that deepens the narrative impact of each scene. The narrative structure of the Equalizer films typically alternates between high-intensity action set pieces and slower, contemplative sequences that explore character motivation, moral ambiguity, and ethical dilemmas. This balance ensures that the audience remains engaged both emotionally and intellectually. The Equalizer may continue this pattern, incorporating suspenseful investigative sequences, strategic planning moments, and emotionally charged interactions with allies and adversaries. These elements serve to humanize McCall, emphasizing the psychological and moral dimensions of his interventions while reinforcing the consequences of his actions. Supporting characters have historically provided a narrative counterbalance to McCall, highlighting his ethical framework and offering perspectives that challenge or complement his decisions. Allies often embody innocence, vulnerability, or moral clarity, motivating McCall to intervene on their behalf, while antagonists provide complex, multidimensional threats that test his abilities and principles. The careful crafting of these characters is critical, as they drive narrative tension, facilitate thematic exploration, and heighten audience investment in the storyline. In The Equalizer 4, the introduction of new characters, possibly including international operatives, local civilians, or morally ambiguous allies, could expand the narrative scope and add layers of ethical complexity. Plot speculation for The Equalizer 4 suggests the possibility of exploring global crime networks, cyber threats, or politically sensitive situations, which would challenge McCall to navigate unfamiliar terrain and confront adversaries with unprecedented sophistication. Such narrative choices would not only escalate the stakes but also align with contemporary social and technological realities, ensuring relevance and resonance with modern audiences. The integration of these elements would also necessitate inventive action sequences that blend physical prowess with tactical intelligence, reinforcing the franchise's signature style. From a production standpoint, The Equalizer 4 is likely to require extensive pre-production planning, particularly in choreographing action sequences, securing filming locations, and coordinating logistics for a cast and crew operating in multiple settings. The franchise's previous commitment to practical effects, realistic stunts, and immersive environments suggests that the fourth installment will maintain a high standard of technical execution. This approach contributes to the authenticity of the narrative, allowing audiences to experience tension, danger, and urgency in a manner that is both visually compelling and narratively satisfying. The use of setting and environment has always been a critical storytelling tool in the Equalizer films. Urban landscapes, confined interiors, and strategically designed spaces often function as extensions of the narrative, providing opportunities for tactical ingenuity and thematic resonance. In The Equalizer 4, one could anticipate diverse settings, potentially including metropolitan centers, industrial complexes, or international locales, each carefully selected to enhance dramatic tension and facilitate inventive action choreography. These environments not only serve as backdrops for physical conflict but also symbolize the social, ethical, and psychological landscapes McCall navigates. The musical score and sound design are equally integral to the franchise's impact. Prior films have utilized a combination of minimalist instrumentation, ambient textures, and rhythmic motifs to underscore tension, punctuate action sequences, and reflect McCall's psychological state. In the fourth installment, the score may evolve to incorporate contemporary musical elements, reinforcing narrative themes while enhancing emotional engagement. Strategic use of silence, diegetic sound, and sudden auditory cues can amplify suspense, heightening audience immersion and emphasizing the stakes of McCall's interventions. The Equalizer franchise also offers a lens through which to examine cultural and ethical themes in modern cinema. McCall's role as a vigilante highlights tensions between individual moral responsibility and institutional authority, raising questions about justice, retribution, and societal accountability. The films often depict systemic failures, corruption, or apathy, positioning McCall as a necessary agent of ethical intervention. The fourth installment may continue to engage with these themes, potentially reflecting contemporary concerns such as digital privacy, human trafficking, globalized crime, or social inequality. By situating McCall within these broader contexts, the franchise maintains relevance and invites audiences to contemplate complex moral questions alongside the excitement of action storytelling. The marketing and audience reception of The Equalizer 4 will likely reflect the franchise's dual appeal, high-caliber action sequences and morally engaging storytelling. Trailers, promotional campaigns, and press releases may emphasize Washington's return, the continuity of the narrative, and the introduction of elevated stakes. Social media engagement, interactive content, and fan events could further amplify anticipation, cultivating a sense of community and shared investment among viewers. Balancing the disclosure of plot details with the preservation of suspense will be crucial, as audience expectations are shaped by both narrative intrigue and the promise of intense action. The potential for The Equalizer 4 to expand the franchise into a longer-running series also warrants consideration. While the previous films established a coherent narrative arc for McCall, the character's ethical framework and operational flexibility provide opportunities for further storytelling without undermining continuity. Future installments could explore diverse thematic territories, including geopolitical conflicts, psychological dilemmas, or emerging forms of criminality, all while maintaining the franchise's core focus on vigilante justice and personal morality. Strategic narrative planning, combined with careful character development, ensures the sustainability of the series and the continued engagement of its audience. In conclusion, The Equalizer 4 represents both a continuation of a beloved action franchise and an opportunity to explore deeper thematic concerns within a contemporary context. The confirmed involvement of Denzel Washington provides a narrative and emotional anchor, while the potential return of Antoine Fuqua as director would ensure stylistic continuity and visual excellence. Though many details remain speculative, patterns established in the previous films, meticulous action, ethical complexity, and character-driven storytelling, offer a reliable framework for anticipating the film's direction. Production planning, narrative strategy, marketing, and audience engagement will all play crucial roles in the ultimate realization of the project, ensuring that The Equalizer 4 maintains the franchise's established standards while offering fresh, compelling content for both new and returning viewers.